Well, hi everyone. Welcome to Future Work Scotland. Thank you for joining us for our October session. Can't believe it's October. It's pretty much November. Halloween tomorrow. We're great to be back with you all. Looking forward to another great session, and we've got a really good one lined up for you this evening. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm your host, Sathpal. Everybody calls me Sath. I'm joined by the rest of the organising team, Donald Henderson. Paula's here somewhere as well. Can't see it on my screen now. We keep it pretty simple. The code of conduct. All we ask is that you be respectful to one another. It's as simple as that. That's all. That's all we ask. We want everyone to have a wonderful experience. We will do our usual updates and community shout outs, etc. at the end of the session. And as usual, we'll have enough time to do a Q&A after our speakers finish delivering our session. We may take some questions along the way, but if you do think of stuff that comes up as we go, please do just drop it in the chat. Please fix it with a Q so we can spot it, and we will relay the questions back to Maryse. And with that, I'm really pleased to be welcoming Maryse to Future Work Scotland. We've got to know each other quite well over the last couple of years. I'm really thrilled Maryse is doing this session with us. We met for the first time at XP 2023 in Amsterdam. Maryse was the track lead of the sustainability track that myself and Scott and Johan were delivering a workshop on. So very cool. We had a great time. And we also met Maryse again this year. She joined us in Edinburgh for Lean Natural Scotland. So very good to have you back and see you. I'm really delighted about this session. I am also a fan of Stoicism. I'm a big fan of this book. If anybody knows it, I would encourage you to read it. I know you would know it. This is one of my favourite books of all time. I'm not going to steal Maryse's thunder. She's a product person at heart, very passionate about it and loves to help teams to deliver great product. And a lot of the talk today will be centered around how you can really benefit by taking a stoic approach. She's done these sorts of talks before, so I'm really glad that we're able to host her this evening for this session. So welcome to Future Work Scotland, Maryse. Over to you.
Well, thanks a lot, Sam. And actually, thank you all, because you're the reason I get to talk tonight. I get to spend time on sharing my passion with you. So I have to thank all of you. It's really great to be here. And we'll talk about Stoicism. So I'll give you a bit of a crash course on it, but mostly some practical, well, let's say inspiration, tools, things to do. And I now see I have an extra supporter because Tom's here too. So that'll be lovely. And all of you will help me through this session, no doubt. It will not be interactive as such. I won't put you into breakout rooms and we won't do things in the chat and what have you. However, this is a session on, well, philosophy, on thinking, on reflecting. So what we will do, and that's why I'm telling you all this before we really get started, is we'll have some moments, some quiet time, so you can write down your thoughts on things. So get these logistics ready while I'm still babbling. Grab a pen and a piece of paper or a digital way to be able to write down your reflections as we go. If you feel like it, you're more than welcome to share your thoughts in the chat, as Sat and Donald already said anyway, but also when it's about the questions I'll be asking, feel free to share them in the chat, but also feel completely free to just scribble them down for yourself. You don't have to share anything. All right, so Stoicism. Before I start sharing my presentation, what does Stoic even mean to you at this point in time? If I say Stoic, what do you think? So you can either write it down or you can write it down in the chat or... And of course, this question will come back at the end. Aaron has shared in the chat, someone who can endure difficult and hard things. All right. So while you're still busy thinking about this question, contemplating, I'll start sharing my screen. And we'll get going. Stoicism for leaders. So we'll do a bit of a crash course. We'll do some practical stuff. And of course, we'll link it to leadership. And now leadership could be management, could mean you're in a position at work. But leadership is also leadership of the self. It also means you need to look inward first before you can start transforming anything else. So Stoicism for leaders could be for leaders at work, people in a management position or whatever position they could be. But if you're not in a management position or a leadership position, this is still valuable because it's also leadership of yourself. So Stoicism for leaders. Oh, unfortunately, my slide does not want to go on. That's interesting. Let's see why that is. Oh, it's just too slow. All right. Or I'm too fast. That doesn't matter. Stoicism for leaders. Now, let's get in the mood of this topic. Imagine this. You're a leader, and you came up with a goal in life, in your personal life, or maybe you should say your work life. You decide you'd like to be living in a big house with a huge garden and a swimming pool and a beautiful house in a wonderful area. And this is really what you think you want to be doing or reach within 10 years, let's say 10 years. That's your goal. That's the goal you set. So we'll take another moment to reflect. What are your thoughts on this? Again, you can share, you can write it down for yourself, that doesn't matter. What are your thoughts on this? If this is your goal. Now I'm going to take you a step further on this journey. Imagine this is what you wanted. This is the goal you set. This is really what you decided you wanted to reach in life. And then within the year, your organization, or let's say the startup you worked at, became a huge success. Through the roof. I'm trying to imagine what startup this could be, but you can imagine. It's going through the roof. You make tons of money. Your energy gets gone up incredibly. You feel good. You have joy at work. It's a great success all around. And that house that you wanted to get, where you wanted to live, and that goal you had set for yourself in 10 years, suddenly within the year, it's within your grasp. So imagine this. What do you now think of the decision of the goal setting that was done, of the decision you made to get going on this route? Again, take some time to reflect. Now, if you go back to that situation, you're a leader and you really decided that you wanted to have that house and a big garden and a swimming pool and all that. And, well, you made the decision to go for that startup. And within the year, the startup went bankrupt. It turned out to be horrible to work at. it wasn't a good place to work at all anyway. Your co-workers didn't turn out to be very nice. You felt depressed. You got financial worries. And it was a big, well, it was big misery all around. Now, how does that make you feel? Excuse me. How does that make you feel if you reflect on this situation and on the result of the decision of setting that goal? Now, maybe you're wondering, why is she starting off with this? This is odd. The whole point of this is that you cannot know at whatever turn in life what is going to happen. What kind of external situations are going to influence the goal you set for yourself. You set a goal and you may think you have influence over how to get there, but life may take strange turns and might give you a different outcome than you anticipated. Now, what we tend to do is, if, let's say, you're a leader and the big decision you have to make is, will I hop on a job with this startup or not? I don't know, maybe you're at this point, you're a leader and you're considering having a job or accepting a job at another company. And you're wondering, should I do this? Should I not do this? Oh, well, if this is what I want, I set a goal. And so if this is what I want to have that house in 10 years, I should maybe take the decision to go for the startup because it could be hugely successful, and then I could do this. I could reach my goal. And then if you actually reach your goal, we tend to say, oh, you see, that was a really good decision. I made a really good decision because, well, it turned out the way I wanted it to turn out. And if it goes bankrupt, the startup, then what we do is we tend to say, oh, it was a bad decision because the outcome didn't turn out the way I wanted it to be. So this is what any Duke calls resulting. We tend to judge decision based on their outcome. And the funny thing is, the outcome is far less influenceable by us than we think. And that is actually what we'll be talking about today. This is my beautiful daughter, Iris, 13 years of age. And she's the reason why I'm here. She's the next generation. And for our next generation, and maybe you don't have kids, maybe you have a different situation, that doesn't matter. But maybe you'll recognize this, that you're driven by something bigger, by an idea of, well, maybe leaving the world a bit of a better place than how we found it. Well, this is my reason, she is my reason why I'm here talking to you about Stoicism, because I want to leave the world a bit of a better place than how I found it. And also, it's actually quite selfish. I'll just admit that straight away. It's quite selfish because I actually really want to be able to look myself in the eye and say, well, at least I did the very best I could in my given circumstances. I tried. I did my best. Even though it wasn't perfect, it'll never be perfect, but at least I did my best. And I do that for her, for Iris. All right. I'm Maryse, chuffed to be here. You see the picture with the bicycle helmet. That's when I was cycling in Tanzania. And this picture is in here. It was also in the meetup, by the way, the meetup app. This picture is here because it shows you need to put in the work. It's as simple as that. Get your hands, or your face in this case, dirty. Do the work. Be on the ground. Be with your feet in the ground. Well, we all know this as people in the future of work anyway, right? You need to put your feet on the gamba. You need to put in the hours. Things don't come by themselves. There is no magic wand. You just need to put in the work and the dust. The middle picture shows, well, me in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu suit, but that's in here because actually life and Stoicism is far more like a wrestling message, wrestling game anyway, I'd say. But there is a parallel there. Practice, practice, practice. You need to put in the hours, otherwise you won't get any better. I'm glad to see Aaron nodding. That's a point of recognition, I'd say. And of course, you see, well, an old man, in this case, Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman emperor and one of the best-known Stoics. So, okay, buckle up. Here is where your crash course on Stoicism starts. Start the timer. We'll see how quickly I can do this. Stoicism is many things. You all had a reflection before we started. And you'll all have ideas, notions on what Stoicism is. The core thing of Stoicism is that it's about virtue. Now, virtue always sounds a bit awkward for me, but what it really means is values. It's living according to a bigger thing than yourself, a bigger worth, a bigger value. And in Stoicism, we know 4 cardinal virtues. And these are wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Now, wisdom, the owl, by the way, on the picture, is about striving for, well, let's say a better way of living. Practical wisdom. So it's not wisdom about words. It's not about, oh, I know exactly what that word means. It is not about wisdom from books. It's about wisdom in real life, applied wisdom, I would say. Courage is about, well, having the audacity, the courage to stand out, to not follow the crowd, to not be like everyone else, but form your own mind, speak your own mind. So that's courage. Justice is very fundamental, well, for Stoicism, and I'd say very fundamental in my interpretation of Stoicism, because what these virtues for the Stoics meant is they really wanted to strive for a just world, a world in which everything is in balance. And that's also on a grander scale, in balance within yourself, but also in the world as a whole, in the world at large. And in this age, in this day and age where sustainability is a big theme and is a big part of what guides us all, I think this part of justice all around the world, is an important virtue for anyone. So it's a virtue in Stoicism as well. And the T, temperance, and it's funnily enough, this is usually what people, well, what people remember about Stoics. People have notions about Stoic people, about Stoicism, and they're often linked to this temperance thing. Temperance means you hold yourself back. You know what you need is just enough. So you try not to strive for, let's remember how we started. You don't strive for the big house with the garden and the swimming pool anyway. This is not typically a virtue for a Stoic person. As a Stoic person, you'd say, well, I'll look at what I really need. I'll see what my needs are, and enough is enough. So this temperance thing is typically something that people remember about Stoicism. And I'd like you to remember that it's not only about temperance, also not only about temperance on emotions, because of course in our language, in English, but also in Dutch, if someone says, oh, don't be so stoic about something, very often people mean, well, cold, emotionless, not very engaged, not very moved, which is in fact not really what Stoicism is about. It just means don't be guided by it. Temper your emotions, temper the influence they have on you. Don't let yourself be guided by them. But actually, this temperance is mostly meant, well, know when something is enough. All right? So wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, the four virtues of Stoicism. Now, this is all very nice and well. I told you, yeah, but wisdom, it's mostly practical wisdom, what the Stoics really wanted. So it's really nice. You tell us, Maryse, that there's these four virtues, but then what? This doesn't tell me how to live well. You know, very nice that I know that these are the virtues, but how does that help me? Well, the Stoics came up with some principles, some ideas, and they said, well, in the end, what you really want to do is you want to strive for the summum bonum, the highest good. And this sounds very fancy, and that's actually how it's meant. Because what the Stoics said, and people among you who are also in sustainability will recognize this, they said, think global, act local. Make your impact on a local scale, but think about the bigger whole. Think about, well, everything is interconnected, about the highest good, about how to live well and how to do well for the world as a whole. So the summum bonum, with everything you do, every decision you make, think if you're not, at least not harming the highest good. And this is something I already mentioned. Sympatheia, of course, you'll recognize the word sympathy, is the realization that we're all interconnected and there is a mutual interdependence of us, of people, but also with nature itself, the natural world as it is. We're all interdependent and we're all connected. So Stoicism at the core is a far more, well, let's say, social philosophy than you maybe would have thought. It's very much about, well, in the end, we're all human and we're all connected. And we should look out for each other. We should take care of each other, all of us. So, sympatheia. And, well, it's also practical. So it's also just do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're cold or warm or tired or molested and whether you're despised, whether you get honor or despise from other people. It doesn't matter. Just do the right thing. And you'll note, you're very smart people, do the right thing. It's not about talking about the right thing. It's about doing the right thing. And they say this, and oh, Sat, do you know where I took this picture? It's in one of the Edinburgh graveyards. Was so wonderful. I was in Edinburgh in September, and I walked around. I walked around town, and there was one of the graveyards near a church. I've at the moment forgotten which church it was, and it was so interesting because there were so many tombstones with this memento mori. Now, this is a very Stoic thing. It came back at a later age in Europe, clearly, because that's how I could take this picture. This wasn't a grave from a Roman emperor. The memento mori means remember to die. Now, people usually then say, oh, that's very morbid. That's a very sad thing to say. But on the contrary, what memento mori means is, well, you know, live well now. Do it now. Don't postpone. Do it now because you never know what your last moment could be. And it's not at all meant to be sad or depressed or anything. But what it does mean is live life to the fullest right now. That's, of course, why we have memento mori and carpe diem usually linked. Remember to die, so live well now. Do it now. And of course, the procrastinators under us will recognize that memento mori is actually, well, spurring you to say, don't procrastinate, do it now, because there might not be another opportunity, another moment. Another principle in your crash course of Stoicism is amor fati, amor, love, fati, of faith. Essential for Stoicism. If you want to remember one thing from Stoicism, it's this. It means embrace your fate, whatever it is. This is, by the way, from a book from a survivor of a concentration camp, Bergen-Belsen, who wrote his memoirs on how they survived the camp and how he managed to stay stoic even though he was in a concentration camp. You'll find this extreme circumstance has also enabled other people to have their stoicism flourish. We'll get back to that in a minute. The amor fati is the love of your fate, embracing of what fate throws you in the face. You may disagree with it. He wasn't happy to be in a concentration camp. Of course he wasn't happy to be there. Would he have preferred to walk out? Of course he would have. But since he couldn't, and he couldn't change his circumstances, he figured best make the best of it. And you'll remember I said somewhere at the start of this chat, the best I could in given circumstances. That is what amor fati is about. You don't have to agree with your fate. You don't have to think, oh, this is really lovely that I'm in a concentration camp. Of course not. But if you're there and you cannot, at that point in time, influence your circumstances, best make the best of it. And that is, well, what Mr. Hertzberg did, and also what Edith Eger did, who we'll get to in a minute. Ah, there she is. Edith Eger, if there is one book I'd recommend you to read if you want to know more about Stoicism, it's this book. And maybe some of you read it, and you'll think, what? This has nothing to do with Stoicism. Why is she recommending this as a Stoic book? But in fact, she is. And she is a Stoic practitioner, someone who, well, practiced the Stoic way of life, even though she didn't call it Stoic. There is not a word of Stoicism in her book. But everything she does and the way she handles what life throws at her, and I think Erin summarized beautifully at the start, people who can endure, well, difficult things. Well, here is someone who endured difficult things. In Auschwitz, she was made to dance for Mengele. And she still decided, this is the most horrible circumstance I could be in, and I still decide how I respond to it. I still decide that the freedom of my mind is in my mind and I'm untouched by the Nazis that are running this camp. She's written this beautiful book, The Choice, and choice is fundamental to Stoicism. You always have a choice. You decide how you respond to the circumstances. You decide what you make of it. So in fact, it's an empowerment choice, right? You get to decide what you do with it. Wonderful book, wonderful person, very inspiring. And even though she doesn't call it Stoicism in any way, this is one of the best recent Stoic books there is. Choice. It's always about choice. So you always have a choice. It's up to you how to interpret the things that happen. It's up to you to decide what you make of things. It's up to you whether you respond to your emotions or not. You are not your emotions. Emotions happen. You can let them go, acknowledge them, let them go, or you can decide to act on them. I have no judgment here, but it's up to you. The choice is yours. Now we're running towards the end of the crash course, gladly. Not towards the end of my talk, because you'll do some more work here. Stoicism is also about, well, premeditatio malorum. It's about preparing. It's about, well, expecting the worst. That also sounds very depressing, but it isn't. What it very simply means is if you have a wedding day in October in, well, Edinburgh or in Amsterdam, or I don't know where you live, but somewhere in October where there is a fair chance of rain, prepare for rain, because it's very likely it might happen. And if you don't, well, then you could be very upset on your wedding day because it rains on your wedding day. You could call it ironic if you're an Alanis Morissette lover. But it's not ironic, it's just practical. If it's, well, if there is a reasonably fair chance it might happen, well, it could happen. We all know Murphy's Law, it probably will happen. So premeditatio malorum sounds depressing, maybe, expect the worst. But what it really means is, well, be prepared for anything life could throw at you. Make your decision there too. Prepare for a rainy day if it's your wedding day. Or don't, and then, well, make the best of it as it is. So, and the last thing, the Stoics really did, well, was not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There's, by the way, a big connection between wrestling and Stoicism, because the Stoics recognized the art of practice. Practice, practice, practice. And you need to do it. You don't need to talk about philosophy or Jiu-Jitsu, by the way, and you don't learn Jiu-Jitsu from a book either. You need to do it, and you need to practice, and you need to get your hands dirty. Well, not literally if you do Jiu-Jitsu, but you need to practice. You need to get sweaty. You need to do it. So it's a philosophy in action. Now, enough. Let's move on, right, Elmo? I can go on for hours, and I would if you let me, but Sat and Donald won't let me. No, that's just as well. If you can't explain Stoicism in 20 minutes, you can't explain it in 3 hours. Before we go on, I'm wondering, Sat, is there anything in the chat I should know? Or are there people so terribly lost in Stoicism that you think you have to explain this because otherwise we can't carry on?
No,
Nope.
good, very clear.
Oh,
No questions that I can see, but there might be some things at the end. Yeah.
Okay, well then, yeah, then hopefully people will still be able to follow what we do. So anyway, Stoicism, 4 virtues, remember, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, and a few principles, like the preparing, like to remember to die, sort of don't procrastinate. There's a few of these things. So that was your crash course on Stoicism. Now, so what? Why should we care? Well, you should care because as a leader, be it a leader at work, a leader of the self, a leader in whatever sense, we often are taught and we often think that life is like a game of chess. Now, have I got news for you? That's an illusion because life isn't like chess. You can plan, you can set your goals. Remember how we started off with the big house and the swimming pool? But you couldn't influence how your startup turned out. You have a bit of influence, maybe, but there's so many what the Stoics would call externalities that you don't know how it's going to turn out. So you can't really. Life isn't like chess. Life, and leadership for that matter, is far more like poker. You can place bets, you can do a reasonable guess, and what you can do best, and there's this famous American poker player, Annie Duke again, what she says is, well, estimated guesses and do small experiments. If you play poker, now I don't, maybe there's someone here who's an expert poker player, the best thing you can do is keep it small and play it small. And well, what we often do in our work, right? Small experiments. Keep it small and remember it's just a bet. An educated bet, maybe, an educated guess, but it's just a bet. You don't know what will happen. So life is far more like poker than like chess. So that is, I think, why Stoicism matters so much for our leadership. So if you want to, well, live a better life, improve your decision making, improve your living as a leader in whatever sort, I think there's a few lessons from the Stoicism, this very ancient philosophy, that are valuable. And they're here: reflect, refuse, reduce, prepare, and repeat. I really badly wanted all of them to start with an R, but really I couldn't come up with an R word for prepare. But anyway, if any one of you has a better suggestion for prepare, I'd be happy to hear that. So Stoic lessons, well, to improve your decision making and thereby your quality of life, the quality of your leadership. Reflect often. Ask yourself, what did I do wrong today? What did I do? How did I respond? How did I exercise my opportunity of choice. What did I do to what happened to me today? And what duty did I leave undone today? What did I procrastinate on? What should I have done and didn't do? So reflect on these questions. And of course, you'll feel this coming. This will now be another moment to reflect. If you take a minute, ask yourself, what did I do today? Morally, right? This is not about I went to the hairdressers and did my shopping. What choices did I make? So reflect often. And of course, I'll keep talking because otherwise we'll run out of time. But what I hope is to inspire you here to sort of do this reflection for yourself, maybe after this session or maybe at some other point, but reflect often. Ask yourself difficult questions. And the thing is, I ask you to grab a pen and a paper or a digital way of writing things down. Because what we also often do is, oh, I'll sit down and talk about it for a minute. But that's not the whole point of this. The whole point is that you actually force yourself to write it down. Because if you actually put it on paper, digital or physical, that doesn't matter. But if you actually write it down, it sort of comes to life. It's in fact confrontational, to use that word. So write it down. Do write it down. We'll get back to that in a minute, but write it down in a journal. So reflect. Review your day. Have a look at how your day went, the events, the externalities, the things that happened, and how you decided to react, what you did with what happened in your life. Did you miss the train this morning? Did something unexpected happen in traffic? Did you have a flat tire with your bicycle? And then what happened? How did you respond to this? And also reflect, well, in a forward fashion, preview the next day. Because of course, something unexpected will happen tomorrow too. You will get to work if you're a leader and someone you really counted on has fallen ill. Or you'll have someone who is going to give a presentation and suddenly won't be there. Suddenly they said, oh, I can't make it after all. Or this person you were going to hire, they suddenly say, oh no, I'm doing something else instead, even though I promised I'd come and work for you. So reflect forward, preview. Think about what is going to happen the next day and write that down too. Of course, you were expecting them. And you can also do some proper thinking. Think about what is in your control. So imagine, there's another reflection moment here. Imagine you're planning your wedding day in whatever sort, it doesn't matter. Whatever marriage, whatever context, but imagine you're planning your wedding day. If you're thinking about this, and remember, I just spoke about the weather in Edinburgh and the rain in September and something like that. If you think about planning a wedding day, what is in your control? And of course, the next question is, what isn't in your control? Now, the weather is a clear example. But if you take a little more time, you'll realize there is actually not that much in your control. Maybe you've written down what's in my control. Oh, the love of my partner. At least I'll know for sure that'll happen. But you aren't. Not to say that you have a wonderful love of your life. You probably do. But you never know what might happen. So no, that's not something that's in your control. The weather, the location, my dress, my suit, my whatever I decide to wear. No, None of that is in your control. What is in your control is your choice how to respond to the unexpected things life may throw at you. In your control is how you handle Murphy's Law. So don't focus on the outcome or the result. Focus on, well, how I decide to respond, how I decide to make decisions. So aim for, well, the best possible performance in any given circumstance. Don't aim for a big house with a swimming pool and whatever it was I said at the start, I think a huge garden. That's not a proper goal anyway. All of you smart people will, of course, written down something on that's a weird goal to write down anyway. But most importantly, it's something you cannot control. There may be so many things in the circumstances that you can't exercise control over it. Let it go. The thing you can't control is the biggest thing of all. It's your power of choice. Your power of choice, how you respond to whatever happens to you. So focus away from this outcome thing, this goal-setting thing with, well, the measurable metrics, and go to deliberate decision-making. How do you decide what you do next? And of course, how do you decide that? Well, keep in mind those moral values, these cardinal virtues we spoke about at the start. Is this the wise thing to do? Is this a just thing to do? Is it enough? Is this really what I need? Or is it more? Enoughness. So stick these values in your deliberate decision-making, and actually you'll have a more stoic way of leadership. It'll give you peace and quiet and far less dependency on external things. Because if you keep expecting that things, well, will happen the way you were hoping for, you make yourself very vulnerable. Because then you depend on these externalities. So, review regularly. Review your past decisions and preview your future decisions. What is life going to throw at you? And do this daily. It doesn't have to be daily, and I'm not here to tell you when you should do this. But of course, practice makes, well, perfect. I don't like the word perfect, but as good as it gets in given circumstances. Do it often, regularly. And don't fall in this hindsight bias or the resulting trap that we did at the start. Remember, if you have this choice of joining the startup and it becomes very successful, then we think, oh, it was a good decision. And if it doesn't become successful, the same decision suddenly is a bad decision, which is quite odd. It's still the same decision. It just depends on your perspective. So what you should do is review your decisions with a stoic value mindset. So was it a just decision? Was it a wise decision? Etc. And write them down. We spoke about this. Write them down, as some of you are doing right now, because that will actually force you to face what you're writing down. Instead of just thinking about it or only talking about it, write it down. It becomes real if you write it down. And if you do this regularly, you can keep track of your decisions and you'll see them evolve over time. You'll be able to judge whether they actually get any better. Keep track of them in a decision log. I have a decision log in my business journal that says, well, how my decisions go on a daily basis. So am I getting better in making, well, more just choices? Yeah, I do. And you'd say, oh, that's funny. You only write it down. So how does it become better? Well, not because of the writing down, but because of the conscious reflection. And this is a proven scientific thing. People get better at things, at judging how well they do things and how well they decide to do things. So do write them down in a journal. It's a business journal now. It's not, oh, I bought an ice cream and then I had 2 cookies. And this is, I don't know, I lost pounds and whatever, I made money. It's about the business decisions, the big decisions in your life that you make. So it's a, let's say, professional journal. It's not a kiddie journal of the events of the day and how fun they were. And keep track of them. So the second Stoic lesson was refuse and reduce. Refuse to be driven by your emotions and external events. You get to choose how you respond. Accept emotions you have. Stoics are not people that say you can't have emotions, in spite of the fact that a lot of people think that this is what Stoicism is about. There is an example of Seneca, a famous Stoic, and he got very upset when his young friend unexpectedly died. And then people said, "Oh, what kind of Stoic are you? You're so upset by the death of a friend." And then he said, "Well, I still have the feelings. I'm still upset because it's a person I really appreciated and I can't exclude what I feel. However, I decide not to act on what I feel." And some of you may be well versed in Eastern philosophy and meditation, and you'll recognize this. It's acknowledging an emotion and then letting it go. Don't let yourself be guided by it. You are not your emotions. You have emotions. They're valuable. They have every right to be there. And then let go. You choose what to do with them. And then it says, reduce. Funnily enough, the rest of the text has gone, but that doesn't matter because it's the same thing. Reduce the influence by these externalities and these emotions. So refuse to be driven by them and reduce, well, let's say, the influence they bring. You don't have to decide based on your emotions. You could, for example, and this is a very simple practice that you'll all know, you can count to 3 or to 10 or to 100. I don't know, it depends. You can reduce the influence these externalities have on you. For example, by taking a little more time before you respond. Another thing the Stoics are really fond of is reducing the amount of speaking you do. This is funny because I'm doing a speaking engagement with you, but really what they say is, well, and this is also something you'll know, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use them in the same proportion. So you should listen far more often than you speak. So reduce, well, all these engagement, all these, well, conversations you get yourself into. If they're valuable and you can really add something, of course, by all means. But for the rest of it, maybe reduce a little what these influences are in your life. Now, this is another lesson that you'll recognize because we already spoke about this. Prepare, prepare, prepare. Remember the rain. Remember other things. Remember the jiu-jitsu picture. Exercise. Exercise is something you do in the gym or outside if you do running or whatever it is you do. But it's also something you do with your mind. You don't become, well, I don't know if you ever become stoic anyway, but you need to train your stoic muscles. You need to train your mental agility. You become better at it if you train this. That's where the memento mori comes from, right? Remember to die. It's a permanent exercise to sort of say, hey, I need to live the best life I can right now, not tomorrow. No, now. And that's something, if you exercise that often enough, you'll get better at it. And prepare, train your mind, because philosophy is something you do. Well, I said that now so often, you'll now know that philosophy is actually about action. And this is the memento mori and the premeditatio malorum. We already spoke about that. So these are the reasons, well, why you should train your mind. Something bad, well, not might happen, something bad will happen. Just prepare for it. And then repeat. Epictetus, the third, well, very well-known Stoic I'd like to mention today. Epictetus said, well, if you want to be a writer, write. And that sounds so silly, but that's so true. If you want to get better at playing volleyball, well, what you need to do is play volleyball. If you want to have a calmer mind and want to be a better leader in the sense that you don't feel dragged from left to right or influenced by external events, and then suddenly your top management says you need to turn left while you were all the way trying to steer to the right, and you feel all exhausted because, oh, now we're going in another direction yet again, and I feel dragged from one side to the other side. Well, if you want to respond differently to how these things that will happen, they're bound to happen. There is no company on earth that doesn't have these kind of things. There's always something going on. So it's up to you. You get to make the choice how you respond to that. What you decide to do with, well, let's say a leadership that wavers from left to right and what have you. And what you can do is practice regularly. Imagine what you would do if your top boss would suddenly say, hey, we're going to the left now. Imagine that. Imagine that often, daily. Exercise that. And then when it suddenly does happen, you're sort of prepared, right? You've repeated this, you've exercised this. You have an idea of how you might respond. So do something. And this is really important. We've spoken about this more often. But the Stoics really said, and you have to understand, they came from a philosophical tradition. That's the word I was looking for. A lot of vowels there. So they came from a tradition where the philosophy was, well, we talk about words and we talk about concepts. And this is actually, if you now go out on the street and you ask people about philosophy, they'll say, oh, that's people endlessly talking about, I don't know, the definition of right. But what the Stoics said was, a reaction onto that tradition, the sophist tradition. So they had to respond to it, and they said, well, we want it to be practical. If it doesn't actually help you living a better life, making better decisions, making the world a better place, then what good is it? What does it actually help me to know what the definition of good is? It doesn't help me. I want to do good, not talk about doing good and whatever good may be. So Stoicism is practical in real life. Marcus Aurelius, mentioned before, the Roman emperor, I mean, his life must have been pretty hectic, right? There must have been, other field marshals, beggars, problems in Rome, in the ancient Rome he lived in. He must have had his share of problems all the time. And he always said, he's the example of a Stoic ruler, a wise emperor. And he always said, well, prepare yourself for all these people that will cross your path that day, because they will cross your path and still decide how to make the best of it. See the beauty in everyone, in the whole world, and don't seclude yourself away. This is what life is. Life isn't in, well, let's say a monastery. I'm saying this without any judgment. It's not in a monastery, secluded away, but it's in the full of it. It's where the hustle and bustle is. And if you can find peace of mind and, let's say, certainty that you're doing the best you can in the given circumstances, in the middle of all of that, in the middle of bustling Rome, well, then I think you're really doing well, right? It's easy to be doing well when you're away from all the challenges of life. So this really is what this boils down to. Don't spend all your time talking about what good is. That's why we didn't do so much philosophy on that today. It's not about what good exactly is. Just be one. Be a good person. There's one thing, and one day I'll be a Stoic philosopher, really, and I'll make this into what a good person should be. Because as a feminist, I'm a little bothered by the fact that it's always men, and it's a very, let's say, male-focused philosophy. But that's a topic for another day. Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Just be one. So, here's my recommended reading. Well, The Daily Stoic is a book by the same author as Sat was showing. Another of his books is The Obstacle is the Way. That, of course, ties in with the whole philosophy of, well, you need to love the circumstances that are given to you. If there is an obstacle in your circumstance, love the obstacle and make it work for you. Find your way with it. And there's a few other books on how to be Stoic, how to think like a Roman emperor. By the way, very recommended. The Philosophy of Marcus Aurelius. And two original books from these ancient Stoics, Marcus Aurelius himself, and the other one, Seneca. I haven't spoken a lot about, well, let's say, the history of the philosophy. I've done that on purpose because what the Stoics always said is, we're just giving you a few guidelines in life, but find your own way, find your own path. It's not about us writing down the rules for Stoicism. Make your own interpretations and do what you think best in your given circumstances. But these are just a few books that might inspire you for more Stoicism in your leadership. This was me. Well, you know that I've been talking to you for about an hour by now. However, what I would like to point out is that this is my new company. It's about to be born. It's in the process of giving birth. Now, you'd be surprised that I can give a talk while I'm in the process of giving birth. However, grinding stone, the grinding stone for your mind is what this new company is. And this is what it exactly aims to do, to grind your mind, to help you ask these difficult questions that you maybe don't always want to ask yourself. But I do think, well, you should, because that will really help you become a better leader and a better person as such. And together we can make the world a bit of a better place, I'd say. Now, we've got two more slides before we dive into the questions and well, the chit chat after. But of course, we started with what does Stoic mean for you? And what does Stoic now mean for you after my crash course and my few practical lessons? And again, you can write it down in the chat or for yourself, or, well, preferably not only in your head. What does Stoic mean for you at this point in time? And then we go to the last slide. And then I'll stop sharing because then I'll be curious to read if anything pops up in the chat on this. So I'm curious to know what stood out most for you in this session today. Did you learn something in particular? What did you think was remarkable, if anything? Maybe nothing. And be brutally honest too. All right. Well, this is the cue for the questions. So I'll quit. I'll stop sharing. I'll quit the presentation.
Excellent. Great. No, very, very good. Very thought-provoking. Thank you, Maryse.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for bearing with me for an hour. You've been listening. How poor you.
We do have a couple of questions, and then we'll open it up to the group. So there's one I saw from Tom. Yeah, okay. So can you say a little bit more about agile and stoicism, please? To get your perspective on that.
Yes, well, I'd love to. Thanks for that question. I'm also seeing that I'm glad you'll not forget to die. Excellent. Yeah, so the thing is, well, there's actually two things. And I'm first going to say the rude thing. Agility doesn't seem to be very occupied, worried about its morality. I wish in agility, yeah, well, yeah, I really wish in agility we'd take more time to wonder if this is the things we do actually contribute to a greater good. There is hardly any moral decisions in agility. So in that sense, stoicism and agile don't go well together. And I wish it would, and I think together we could. We could bring more stoicism, more morality in agility. So ask yourself, ask your agile group every now and then, are we really sure this is the good thing to do, the right thing to do, the just thing to do? The other thing, however, is what Stoicism says, and remember I spoke about Annie Duke, the poker player, and she says, well, make small bets. The way to win a poker game in these unexpected VUCA circumstances that poker will sort of highlight, in a poker environment, make small bets. Now, and there, of course, is a very logical combination with agility, because that's what we do in agility, right? We make small experiments, small bets, and we try it out and we take it from there. And we do something, which by now you all know is really a Stoic thing too. It's not about only talking about experiments, it's about actually doing an experiment. So in that sense, there is a relation between Stoicism and agility, but I'd really like to strengthen it. So thanks for that question.
Thanks for that. There was one from another Tom. It's quite nice. Tom wanted to know a little bit more about. He was wondering how stoicism came into your life.
Ah,
I don't think you. Yeah, I think that would be good to hear about, because I don't think we covered that.
well, I am very privileged in that sense because I came from a classic grammar school for the Dutch people among us, from a gymnasium. So I, well, got Stoicism shoved down my throat at a young age. And then I had the classic response, I'd say for years, I'd say, oh, all these philosophers, and it's okay, that's the honest answer. And the funny thing is, and that's how it often goes in life, somehow, because I had done 6 years of, well, classical training in that sense, somehow it did stick in the back of my mind. And I've had a journey when it comes to soul searching, finding answers to the big challenges in life. I've done my bit. I've done a bit of church. I've done a lot of Judaism in all kind of extreme forms. I've done meditation things. I've done Eastern philosophy. I've called myself a Buddhist for a time in my life. And all these other paths, for me, somehow didn't quite click because, well, maybe because I did 6 years of grammar school and was very, well, drilled in the rational way of looking at things. So only after all these other journeys and all these paths I walked, I rediscovered Stoicism, and I started it all the puzzle suddenly fitted. I don't know how to say this in English. You'll hear I'm not a native speaker. I have no words for to express this, but what happened is suddenly it all made sense, because this is what I did. This is what I grew up with, sort of. So for me, it was a homecoming. Oh, I sound almost emotional now, but that was really true for me. It sort of was logical. This is what I understood, and what fits with how I work, how my brain works, how, oh well. So that's the answer. This is how, well, Stoicism was there early on, and it came back to me after a while.
I was listening there, and when you said that, I thought of, you had a bit of convergence and then some emergence.
Yeah. Well, yeah, well, yeah, well, that's actually true. Yeah.
Good. So we've got a few other ones I did spot. I think Tom's asked another one around, is there anything written about morality and agility?
Well, Tom, if you find something, let me know, please. Well, the thing is, I've written a few posts on LinkedIn years ago, and I was laughed at that point. Yeah, not literally laughed at, but it was like, what a silly question, and we shouldn't be, we should focus on business results and etc., which I also understand, by the way. So I let that go, and it might be that by now some people um, have written about this, but I still think that, well, we should be bringing more philosophy into our agile practice as we do. And I know Tom is working on that too. That's his mission in life. Well, the other Tom, I actually mean Tom Jans. Well, maybe Tom, the other Tom too. I don't know. And I think we need everybody everywhere all at once to just bring in this morality back into what we do, because we have an impact on people's life, right? People spend time with us. We do all these things, and well, I don't know. It doesn't matter if it should be it would be a good thing if we bring more moral questions onto the agenda. Yeah.
I can't find it now, but there was somebody did ask a question about whether there's I think it was like a Stoic book club.
Yeah. There is
there is lots of books on Stoicism. Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots of books, and there is lots of book clubs. And I'm going to give you a word of warning. Well, not a word of warning, because you're all very smart people who can make their own choices. But Stoicism has gone into a hype cycle. There is a lot of people in the Netherlands. We've got a famous swimmer. He won an Olympic medal, and he's big on Stoicism at the moment. And there's quite some other people who are, let's say, hopping on the Stoic train because it seems so popular in the moment. But be a bit careful what you read. So the Daily Stoic is really a good start. The Donald Henderson. There's really a lot of material, a lot of good book clubs where you'll see if one of these books will be talked about there, it's interesting, and drop in and try and follow it. And there is quite some crap going on about Stoicism too. I once heard a podcast where someone was saying, yeah, so Stoicism is really helping me being a better product owner because I don't have emotions. I cut them out. So these Stoic lessons really help me be a better product owner. And this really made my brain go wild, because there were so many things in this one sentence that I thought, Stoicism doesn't tell you not to have emotions. I don't think you're a better product owner because you say you don't have emotions. By the way, you're not acknowledging that you're influenced anyway by your emotions, because we're still human beings, right? You get to choose, and your emotions are still very real, right? You don't have to act on all of them, but they're there. So there was so many things in that sentence that made me go wild. It also made me realize that, well, don't believe everything you hear. So also don't believe everything I said. Go and find out for yourself. Make your own Stoic system. Find out what you think is right and wrong. And as Marcus Aurelius would say, well, read things and make up your own mind. And by the way, Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations as his own meditations. It wasn't meant to be a published book. Well, there you go. So he just wrote down his own, he was doing the reflecting every day. And that's what he did. And I mean, now we publish it and we say that's the big book on Stoicism, but it was never meant to be published as such, because they never wanted to sort of make a belief system. They just said, well, these are a few things we do, maybe they're useful. It's pretty down to earth, all of that. So, all right.
Good stuff.
Yes.
Good stuff. There's lots of thanks, Tom, for sharing all these wonderful resources and links. I hope you'll all take advantage of the Tom's generosity and all the things he's sharing there. If they're of interest to you. I don't see no questions. So if anybody wants to come off a mute and verbally ask a question, you're welcome. We've still got about 10 minutes or so before I'll start to close. So happy to open up to the group. Nothing else in the chat.
I see a great question of who or where did Stoicism start. It's a great question because I wasn't sure I'd have enough time, but we'll talk a bit on Stoic history. So, but before we do that, I also see Vinny's quote in the chat. We suffer more in imagination than reality. That's her favorite Seneca quote. It is a nice quote because this is also the power of your own mind. You can bend it in every direction you want, right? So it's something Seneca said, but it's also something that Marcus Aurelius was really keen on, saying, well, you know, you think someone wronged you, but that's something you think, and you think it's wrong. But if you think that whatever was done isn't wrong, if you consider it neutral, it's just something that happened, were you then wronged? Maybe you weren't. If you don't consider it wrong, then maybe it wasn't wrong. Um, so it's an interesting, well, mind experiment. It's an exercise to sort of shift your perspective and thinking, well, maybe if I don't consider it wrong, then it wasn't wrong. So this is the power of perspective, and well, that ties to Vinny's quote. So where did Stoicism start? Well, a while ago. It started off with Zeno. I think in the 4th century before Christ, but I'll honestly say I'm not sure. Tom is maybe going to help me. Oh no, he's not. So a while ago, and then it evolved actually a lot with Epictetus. Epictetus was a man. It's all men, right? We need to do the female Stoic movement. But anyway, he was born a slave, and this is really interesting because this is maybe where this whole thing of liberating your mind. He was born a slave, um, and he developed his stoic line of thought all the while being a slave. In the end, he was able to buy himself out. Um, but everything he's been teaching ever since stemmed from his period as an enslaved person, where he said, just like, well, centuries later, Edith Eger and Abel Herzberg would say, well, if they put a prison around you, you need to start loving the prison. This is what Edith Eger said in Auschwitz. Well, if they put barbed wire around you, you need to start loving the barbed wire. So this is what Epictetus did. He started thinking about his freedom of mind all the while being enslaved. And he is so famous because the first writings we found of Stoicism started with Epictetus. So that's an important name to remember. Epictetus really evolved it because he actually wrote down his lessons. It's a nice little book, and Credion, he's actually written down a few of the lessons. Well, you know, this might be handy things if you want to live a more stoic life. It's a really tiny book, by the way. So it evolved from Zeno to Epictetus. And then, well, there was a few of these great Roman thinkers, the Marcus Aurelius, the Seneca, the Cicero. Cicero was a well-known, the word in English slips my brain. He held talks in the Roman Senate. The word, I forget the word, but you'll get the idea. So his talks were written down, and a lot of his Stoic philosophy was, well, sort of woven through everything he spoke about. So it started off small. It started off with Zeno, who was, by the way, the wine merchant who was shipwrecked and had his, well, epiphany of, well, this shipwreck was actually my biggest luck because this is, well, he ended up in Athens, got to learn things, and so it evolved. Um, so a lot of things in Stoicism are linked to bad things happening and still making the best of it. So it started there, it evolved, and then, well, it spread far and wide. Stoicism was really big in the Renaissance in Europe. That's of course why the memento mori was everywhere in Edinburgh. I'm pretty sure there's many other places where you can find gravestones with the memento mori and the amor fati, because in the Renaissance, the people in Europe were very interested in, well, bringing the ancient Rome back to life and sort of reviving this ancient philosophy. And then, well, it's sort of quieted down again. And then, well, ever since Corona, it seems to have another surge. Maybe because the bad circumstances, the unexpected things that we couldn't control. I mean, the whole COVID situation was outside of our control. It happened. The only thing we could do is decide how to respond to it, how to choose our reaction to it. So maybe that's why it sort of became big again. And that was a crash course on the history of Stoicism. Badly done, I'd say, but still.
No, that was wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. I was thinking what you were saying, and I thought, what word were you looking for when you were talking about Cicero? And the only one I come up with was orator. Did you read
Yes,
orator? Yeah,
yes.
because he was a sort
Redenaar,
of
yeah,
a
yeah,
big,
exactly,
public
exactly.
speaker sort of.
Yeah, a professional speech
Yeah,
person,
yeah.
whatever.
He was famous for that, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
So there was a couple of comments around. See some of the other resources you mentioned, or some of the things you've written in the past. Could you collate those? Because if you can share them with me when I share the recording. I can include some references, post them
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
I think folk are keen to delve a little bit more deeply into lots of. So you've clearly inspired, which is
yeah,
great.
grand.
So
Yeah,
folk want to deepen their understanding and do a bit more research, which is great.
yeah,
If you can share anything you think would
yeah,
be useful, I'll share it out.
yeah, sure. Be happy
When
to.
we post out things post the event, so that would be great.
Yeah.
We've probably got we've got time for another one or two. If there is, if not, then we'll start wrapping up. Any other questions for Maryse? I think BC.
Well, I
Okay.
have a question for Tom Jans. So who would now be the best Scrum Master? Marcus Aurelius or Kant or Aristotle?
There's only one way to find out. Or
Exactly.
is there? Yeah, yeah. I'll be talking about philosophy at XP Days at the end of next month in Belgium this time. So I'm playing a home game.
Look forward to that. I'll see you there. I'm
Ah,
going to
yeah.
be there. Yeah, I'm going to
Okay, great.
workshop, so yeah, that'll be
Great.
fantastic. I look forward
And
to it.
we'll do a little show of hands for it to see who was which
Yes.
philosopher was the better Scrum Master.
Right. Okay, you're on. That'll be
Nice,
great.
nice.
I'm looking forward to it. Any other questions for Maryse? If not, then I'll start wrapping up. I know that was great. I think, but yeah, if we could collate some more resources, that's good. I shared a couple of books as well. So, you
Yeah,
happy to share your pack, your slides?
yeah, of course, yeah,
I'll send those round as well because I think you
yeah.
mentioned a couple of
Excellent.
other books that I didn't mention, but same sort of selection. So I think that's really good. But no, great. Well, I guess I'm going to start wrapping up then. And first of all, just to thank you for joining us and delivering a very insightful and thought-provoking session. Really enjoyed it. You know, I've got an interest in this space as well. So I think it was lovely to hear your perspectives and good to see you again. So thank you for that, Maryse. Great to have you, and I'd love to have you back sometime. So yeah, a bit of a virtual round of applause
Thank
for
you.
me.
Yeah. Thank you.
See a
Before
few
you
hands
go on,
joining.
Sad, there is one thing. So thank you. Thank you all for having me, and thank you for listening to me. Thank you for bearing with me, sharing my passion. And there is one thing, it's not officially a part of Stoicism, but Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and a few others mention it very often. Be grateful. It's part of the amor fati, of course, embrace your fate, but it's also be grateful for what you do have. Be grateful for these wonderful people here. Be grateful for the opportunity I had. Be grateful for what you all shared in the chat. I mean, look at the collective power, the wisdom we have in this group. It's truly inspiring. So I am very grateful I got to be here with you tonight. Thank you.
Fantastic, lovely. Thank you, Maryse. And thanks to you all for joining. Wonderful to have you, as Maryse said there, your inputs, your sharing your thoughts, your participation, your contribution. These sessions are always made amazing for us as hosts by guests in our community who come along and engage. So thank you all for your insights, and those of you who shared other resources as well. So fabulous to see all of that, and I look forward to digging into some of that myself. just to give you a bit of a look forward, because we have been setting up some of our other events, so we're really pleased that we've now got sessions in right to the end of the year and even early next year. So we're looking a little bit further ahead. Next month, our penultimate session, we'll be welcoming another of our friends from the global community, Wouter Lagerwich, who Maryse also knows. We're all friends in the global community, and Wouter's written a new book around legacy in systems and in tech, which I think is a fantastic and important topic. I've spent years of my own career battling with legacy and technical debt and all of these things. So he's written an insightful new book on how to make sure that you aren't hindered by that as you look to develop a great product. So we look forward to welcoming him next month and hearing all about that. And then in our final session of the year, we will welcome back Peter Russian, who was actually one of the first speakers. And we were talking earlier that Donald and I hosted when we got involved in this group. So some 5 years ago. So that will be quite a nice sentimental moment for us as well. So Peter Russian will join us for the final session of 2024, and he will be talking about some of the hits and myths of intention-based leadership. So based on some of David Marquis' work. So when we did that session, we were focused on Turn the Ship Around. A lot of people know that famous book. So Peter's part of that community, and he does a lot of work in that space. He's actually moved out to Boston, so we're hoping to have him in person, but he's not going to be over in timeframes at work, but he's doing a virtual session for us. So really looking forward to that. So do join us for that if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that. And then our opening session of 2025 is also available now for you to sign up to, and we'll be welcoming Alison Coward to Future Work Scotland, and she'll be doing an opening session on her work in the workshops, a culture workshop, and she recently did the keynote at Agile Cambridge, I think it was. So we're looking forward to welcoming her to open the 2025 program. So lots of good stuff there for you all to choose from. I'm sure some of it will be of interest to you. So yeah, grab your spot while it's available, and we look forward to seeing you over the next few months. And with that, I thank you all again for joining us. It's wonderful to be
Don
here.
have a hand up.
And, sorry?
Does Don have a hand up?
Somebody's got their hand up. Oh, I don't know.
There's a little icon with a hand on Donald.
Oh, I didn't see it. Somebody want to add something? I don't see it. So I don't know whether it was a mistake.
I don't think so, sorry.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, that's all right. Right, well, that's us really. So thank you all, and as I say, we look forward to seeing you again, and enjoy the rest of your morning, your afternoon, your evening, wherever you happen to be. So thanks again, everyone, for a great session. So take care. All right, all the best.
Excellent job. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, Seth.